become almost second nature for me to start on the left-hand side and kind of work my way off, or if I'm doing something smaller, kind of start in the upper left and work my way down and off of the drawing. I've gotten to the point where I do it without even thinking about it anymore, once I get it kind of mapped out. So I'm going to pull up. Again, that lip shows up not so much because you don't want to outline it as a solid mark, because you get these spots where that light's hitting brighter in some spots than other areas. And it'll give you an implied edge, like you'll connect those marks into the complete form. I'm going to go with the eraser tips here. And you'll still see where the milk's at, you'll get an ellipse. Like you'll see the top of the milk be brighter. So I'm using the eraser tip to pull up kind of a lighter tone. The stem almost disappears on this one. So I'll use the little tip for some of these lines. And again, since we wiped this graphite into the paper fairly hard, that's about as white as you're going to be able to pick it up, even with the little eraser tip. But there's all these real subtle kind of, again, they become almost like a bent mirror, picking up all these different reflections and, like different things that are light around them that are bouncing off. I'll have reflections cut right through the milk, and that's one way to show that the milk is actually on the inside of the cup. And then the foot, again, is something like most of that kind of disappears, and I just get this little edge on that base that kind of comes around. Very subtle. And I'm going to go back with the dark. But you want these to be very smooth. Like, try to avoid having a lot of pencil marks. And if you're really light with the charcoal, that shouldn't be hard to do. Like, you should be able to go back in and soften it. That's why I've got the Q-tips up there. And I shape this a little bit. Let's get a cast shadow. Actually, I'm going to grab one of those. My background is all going to get much darker. Forgot to grab one of those pastel sticks. I'm going to go up there and get one of those here in a second. So this is where I would use the Q-tip to just go in and soften some of this a little bit. You can also use the tissue on your finger, but I found that the Q-tips work fairly well for this. this, I've got that cast shadow that comes out. And the LEDs have actually kind of made it a little more intense. That's roughly the shape of that glass. And then this whole area behind it, right down to that edge, is going to get darker. So go in with that and then go back with the charcoal, kind of tighten up my edge a little bit so that glass looks nice and crisp. Some way you can tell if you got a good mask or not. You try to blow and you can't do anything. And then that is going to be, the Q-tip won't do a good job of that because it's too small. So that's going to be for the tissue to soften that background. You can leave some of the texture in the background if you would like. But if you're going to do that, you have to be a little more careful. Like I haven't been careful in terms of what direction my marks are going. If I was actually going to leave some of this, I would be much more concerned about having marks that are more uniform and work together. You know, something more along these lines rather than just having it be kind of random where I've gone. Just to try to get it down and fill it. Go back maybe with the eraser pen. Sharpen on my edge. It's probably not a bad idea to do the background completely first. But the eraser pen is just for that. It's to do these very linear shapes in very detailed areas. And it's still not white. So the last thing I'm going to do, I need an eraser. Soften my cast shadow here a little bit. Shape it. And you'll see a lot of, on the cast shadows, you'll see where the edges get darker and it's kind of lighter in the center. And that's just because what we were talking about with the impurities in the glass, where you get, it's the same kind of thing. Less light goes through the edge because it's trying to go through more glass, so it gets darker because of the impurities. So the last thing I'm going to do on this is pull up with a piece of chalk. If you have a charcoal set that gave you a white charcoal, you can use that. If not, using the corner of a piece of chalk. But I get these little spots where this reflections are even brighter on this. But it's very select. Don't let it get too, it's easy for it to get kind of carried away. So I'm just pulling up those small light areas. And you can't, it'd be convenient if we could use like the Prisma pencil on this, because that would allow to get really fine. But unfortunately the Prisma pencil will not draw on top of the charcoal because it's too waxy. So you just get these little spots where that light hits. So this is why, when I was saying we probably won't finish these today, this is why. There's going to be a lot of back and forth once you start dealing with the reflections on this. There's a lot of subtle things that happen that are going to require you to kind of keep going back and forth on it to bring it out. But you do, once you've got it drawn, you know, like once I've got this one finished, I really don't want to do, this stuff is so unstable, like it's so easily smeared. I really don't want to go back and have to do anything over here. So you really want to work your way off, because you can see what it does. I mean, look at the inside of my hand. So if I brought that back over the top, it would smear it all over the place. Part of that is working flat. Like I'm working flat just because the camera has a tendency to kind of give it a fisheye look anyway, and I don't want to make that any worse than it is. Normally this would be at an angle so my hand would not be getting in it quite so much. But flat, you have a tendency to like put your hand down. So anyway, finish. Like if you got to do stuff up here, do that, work your way right off. When I start on a larger bottle, I would be finishing this part of it, working down like this. So you're working your way, if you're right-handed, you're working your way kind of from upper left to lower right. If you're left-handed, of course, you go the other way. So.